Lexie Hull just walked into a WNBA game with 2 black eyes and left with a busted lip, but what she said after dropping 22 points might be the most savage response in Fever history. This wasn't just another win against Chicago. This was personal, and when you hear what really went down in that locker room before tip-off, you'll understand why Indiana's players were playing like their careers depended on it. Fever absolutely demolished the Sky 97-77, and Hull's post-game comments are now going viral for a reason nobody expected. She literally stood there with blood still on her jersey and delivered a message that had even her own teammates shocked. But before we get to what she said, you need to understand the chaos that led to this moment. If you're ready for this wild story, drop a comment saying Fever Rising right now, because what I'm about to reveal changes everything about how we see this team. The drama started 3 days before the Chicago game when Hull took an elbow to the forehead during practice. Not just any elbow either. This was from Aaliyah Boston during a full contact drill that got way too intense. The impact was so brutal that Hull's face immediately swelled up, giving her those 2 black eyes that made her look like she'd been in a street fight. But here's what the team didn't tell anyone. Hull actually passed out for 30 seconds on the court. The medical staff wanted to sit her for 2 weeks minimum. Instead, she showed up to the Chicago game looking like a warrior ready for battle. What happened next would shock everyone watching. Hull didn't just play through the pain, she went absolutely nuclear on Chicago's defense. 22 points on 8 of 12 shooting, including 4 3-pointers that had the Sky's coaching staff losing their minds on the sideline. But the real story happened in the third quarter when Chicago's Diamond DeShields accidentally caught Hull with an elbow to the mouth. Blood everywhere. Timeout called. And instead of coming out of the game, Hull waved off the trainers, spit blood on the court, and nailed a 3-pointer on the very next possession. The crowd went absolutely insane. Even Caitlin Clark, who was sitting on the bench in street clothes due to her injury, jumped up and started screaming. This was the moment that defined not just the game, but possibly the entire season for Indiana, because what Hull revealed after the game explains why this team has completely transformed their identity. She said, and I quote, "They thought we were soft without Caitlin. They thought we'd fold. I wanted them to know that we're not the same team from last year. This is personal now. Every game, every possession, we're coming for blood." But that wasn't the whole story. Sources inside the organization are now revealing that there was a players-only meeting before the Chicago game where things got heated. Kelsey Mitchell apparently stood up and challenged every single player in that room. She allegedly said that some teams were already planning their playoff strategies, assuming Indiana would be an easy out without Clark. That lit a fire under this entire roster that nobody saw coming. The numbers from this game tell an even crazier story. Indiana didn't just beat Chicago, they absolutely humiliated them for the 5th straight time this season. Think about that for a second. 5 wins against the same team by an average of 24 points per game. That's not basketball, that's domination. And they did it while missing half their roster to injuries. Sophie Cunningham out for the season. Sydney Colson torn ACL. Katie Lou Samuelson dealing with knee issues. Erica Wheeler with a broken foot. This should have been a disaster waiting to happen. Instead, something incredible emerged from all that adversity. Kelsey Mitchell took over like we've never seen before. 20 points and 8 assists against Chicago, but it's how she got them that matters. She was hunting Marina Mabrey on every possession, targeting her specifically because of comments Mabrey made on social media about Indiana being a one-player team. Mitchell made it personal, scoring 14 of her 20 points with Mabrey as her primary defender. What really set social media on fire though was the 4th quarter massacre. Up by 15 with 8 minutes left, most teams would coast to the finish. Not this Fever team. They went on a 22-7 run that had Chicago's players literally arguing with each other on the court. Angel Reese, who wasn't even playing due to her wrist injury, was caught on camera shaking her head in disgust from the bench. The Sky's locker room after the game was reportedly dead silent for 20 minutes before anyone even spoke. Natasha Howard's performance deserves its own conversation because what she did to Camila Cardoso was borderline disrespectful. 18 points, 7 rebounds, 4 steals, and she held Cardoso to just 6 points on 2 of 9 shooting. But here's the part nobody's talking about. Howard was mic'd up for this game, and the audio that leaked afterward is absolutely savage. Every time she scored on Cardoso, she'd whisper something that the mics barely picked up. Production won't release the full audio, but sources say it was psychological warfare at its finest. The timing of this demolition couldn't have been more perfect either. Indiana came into this game clinging to the 8th seed, just one game ahead of the Los Angeles Sparks. One loss and they'd be in serious danger of missing the playoffs entirely. The pressure was suffocating. Vegas had them as 3-point underdogs despite owning Chicago all season. The narrative was already being written about how they'd collapse without their superstar. Then Lexie Hull happened, but her story goes even deeper than just this one game. 2 weeks ago, she was barely getting 10 minutes per night. She'd been relegated to garbage time duty, and trade rumors were swirling that Indiana was shopping her to free up cap space. Hull heard every single rumor, read every single tweet calling her washed, saying she didn't belong in the league anymore. She kept receipts on everything. That practice incident with Boston, it wasn't really an accident. Multiple sources confirmed that Hull asked for more physical practices because she felt the team was getting soft. She wanted to prove she could handle the contact, handle the pressure. When that elbow connected and she hit the floor, Boston immediately tried to help her up. Hull pushed her hand away, got up on her own, and finished the drill. That's when her teammates knew something had shifted. What happened next in that Chicago game would become legendary in Fever history. With 6 minutes left in the third quarter and Indiana up by just 8, Hull checked back into the game with blood still visible on her jersey. The very first play, she set a screen on Diamond DeShields that was so hard, so violent, that even the referees looked shocked. Legal play, but the message was clear. Hull was out for revenge. She proceeded to score 11 points in the next 4 minutes, including 3 consecutive three-pointers that had the entire arena on their feet. But the most savage moment came when she drove baseline on DeShields, took contact, finished through the foul, and while lying on the ground, pointed directly at the sky bench and smiled. The technical foul she got was worth it. Her teammates mobbed her during the free throw timeout, and even Stephanie White couldn't hide her grin on the sideline. The psychological impact of this performance can't be overstated. Other teams watching this game saw a Fever squad that wasn't just surviving without Caitlin Clark. They were thriving. They were angry, they were hungry, and most importantly, they were together in a way that nobody expected. This wasn't the same team that started the season looking disconnected and overwhelmed. Aaliyah Boston's evolution deserves recognition too. Without Clark drawing double teams, Boston had to become the primary offensive focus against Chicago. She responded with 16 points and 9 rebounds, but more importantly, she set bone-crushing screens all game long that freed up Hull and Mitchell for open looks. She's transformed from a finesse player into an enforcer, and Chicago felt every bit of that transformation. The aftermath of this game is still developing, but early reports suggest that Chicago's locker room is in complete chaos. Their playoff hopes are essentially dead, and whispers about coaching changes are already starting. Meanwhile, Indiana's confidence is at an all-time high. They're not just trying to make the playoffs anymore. They're trying to send a message that they're dangerous with or without their superstar. But here's where things get really interesting. Caitlin Clark was seen after the game having an intense conversation with Hull that lasted over 20 minutes. Cameras caught portions of it, and Clark appeared to be incredibly animated, gesturing wildly while Hull just stood there nodding. Sources close to the situation say Clark told Hull that her performance was exactly what this team needed to see, that someone besides her could take over a game and dominate when it mattered most. The ripple effects are already being felt around the league. 3 different playoff teams have reportedly called emergency film sessions specifically to study this new version of Indiana. The Phoenix Mercury's Diana Taurasi was quoted saying she's never seen a team's identity change this dramatically this late in a season. Even Las Vegas Aces coach Becky Hammon admitted she's concerned about potentially facing this Fever team in the playoffs. What makes Hull's story even more remarkable is what she overcame to get here. Earlier this season, she was shooting just 28% from 3 and averaging less than 4 points per game. She was the forgotten player on a roster full of stars. Trade rumors, benchings, DNP's coach's decision. She endured it all. Now she's dropping 22 with 2 black eyes and a busted lip like it's nothing. The medical staff revealed after the game that Hull actually needed 4 stitches in her lip but refused to get them until after she finished her media obligation. She stood there, blood occasionally dripping, answering every question with a smile. When asked about playing through the pain, she simply said, "Pain is temporary, but sending a message lasts forever." That quote is already being printed on t-shirts in Indianapolis. This transformation isn't just about one player or one game though. This is about a team that everyone wrote off finding their identity at the perfect moment. They've won 4 of their last 5 games, all without Clark, and they're playing their best basketball when it matters most. The chemistry between Mitchell, Hull, Howard, and Boston has reached levels nobody predicted. The defensive intensity they showed against Chicago was particularly impressive. Holding any professional team to 77 points is difficult. Doing it while missing key rotation players and dealing with injuries across the board is almost impossible. Yet Indiana made it look easy. They forced 23 turnovers, blocked 7 shots, and held Chicago to 31% shooting from 3. That's not just good defense. That's suffocating, demoralizing, season-ending defense. Looking ahead, Indiana has 3 games left in the regular season, and their playoff positioning is still very much in flux. They could finish anywhere from 6th to 9th, depending on results. But after watching Hull's performance and hearing her post-game comments, does anyone really want to face this team right now? They're playing with nothing to lose and everything to prove. The bigger picture here is about legacy and perception. All season long, the narrative was that Indiana was Caitlin Clark and nothing else. That without her, they were just another mediocre team destined for an early playoff exit. Hull's bloody masterpiece against Chicago didn't just challenge that narrative, it destroyed it completely. This team has depth, heart, and most importantly, they have fighters who refuse to back down. Social media exploded after Hull's post-game interview. The clip of her saying, "We're coming for blood," has over 3 million views already. Fever fans are calling it the turning point of their season. Even neutral fans are admitting they underestimated this Indiana team. The bandwagon is filling up fast, and tickets for their remaining home games are selling out within minutes. But perhaps the most telling reaction came from Caitlin Clark herself. She posted on social media after the game with just 3 words. "That's my team." No emojis, no extra commentary, just pure pride in what her teammates accomplished without her. That kind of leadership and support from your injured superstar means everything in moments like this. The question now becomes whether Indiana can maintain this momentum heading into the playoffs. History suggests that teams who peak at the right time often make deeper runs than anyone expects. And right now, the Fever aren't just peaking, they're exploding. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder the size of Indiana itself. Hull's emergence as a legitimate scoring threat changes everything about how teams can defend Indiana when Clark returns next season. You can't just load up on Clark anymore. You can't ignore Hull on the perimeter. You can't leave Mitchell one-on-one. This team has weapons everywhere, and they're all battle-tested now. Final word goes to Hull herself, who ended her post-game press conference with one more unforgettable quote. When asked if she had any message for the teams they'll face in the playoffs, she looked directly into the camera, blood still on her jersey, and said, "We're not done yet. This was just the appetizer." Then she walked off, leaving reporters stunned and Fever fans absolutely electrified. If you think this Fever team is dangerous now, just wait until they get fully healthy. This story is far from over, and Lexie Hull just became the unlikely hero nobody saw coming. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because what happens next in Indiana might shock the entire basketball world. Drop a comment with your thoughts on Hull's performance and whether you think the Fever can make a deep playoff run without Clark. This is just the beginning of something special.